Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome everyone to the second public meeting for calendar year 2015 and ask that you join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first matter on this morning's agenda is the approval of the minutes of the December 18th public meeting, and I'd like to recognize Commissioner Cawley as editor of the minutes. Commissioner Cawley.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning. I've reviewed those minutes, and I move that they be approved as submitted.
Second. Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as submitted, and it's a pleasure to welcome to the podium to commence with our public meeting agenda items, Ms. Cheryl Walker-Davis. Cheryl, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning.
Good morning.
May it please this Honorable Commission, on behalf of your various offices and bureaus, we present for your consideration and disposition the following agenda items, commencing this morning with matters on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance. With regard to the first item, Marcus Love versus Philadelphia Gas Works, there is the motion of Vice Chairman Coleman, the statement of Commissioner Whitmer, and the oral statement of Commissioner Brown.
I'd like to begin by recognizing Vice Chairman Coleman for purposes of his motion. Vice Chairman Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask that my motion be entered into the record as though I had read it in its entirety. Before the Commission are the exceptions of Philadelphia Gas Works to the initial decision sustaining the formal complaint in part filed by Marcus Love against PGW. The complaint concerns a makeup bill for approximately $6,500 that PGW issued to the customer in September 2012 for previously unbilled service. The unbilled service was due to a malfunctioning automatic meter reading device that transmitted a 0 meter reading at the service location for the prior 40 months through no fault of the customer. I am sympathetic to the customer situation here. However, I agree with the initial decision that the customer is responsible for the previous unbilled service in accordance with the applicable law. Moreover, Chapter 56 of the Commission's regulations specifically authorizes the makeup bill in this instance. On the other hand, I also agree that PGW did not provide adequate and reasonable service in violation of Code Section 1501 when over a period of 3+ years it failed to notice that complainant's gas usage was not being reported accurately, and that while public utilities are not expected to provide perfect service, I am concerned that we continue to see these types of cases against PGW involving the automatic meter reading system malfunctioning, resulting in underbilling that goes undetected for extended periods of time. Therefore, I believe a $1,000 civil penalty is appropriate for the reasons discussed at pages 15 through 18 of the initial decision. However, I do not agree with the initial decision to issue a conservation credit to reduce the amount of the makeup bill. Although I believe the Commission has the authority to order a conservation credit for previously unbilled service that have supported the issuance of a conservation credit in appropriate cases, I do not agree that the conservation credit is appropriate here. As noted in the record, the customer occupied the service location beginning in August 2011, which was 13 months prior to the discovery of the AMR problem. Historically, the Commission has not directed a conservation credit with underbilling for this or a similar amount of time. Moreover, the remaining 27 months of the 40-month period of 0 reading, the customer did not occupy the service location and arguably was not deprived of any meaningful opportunity to conserve during that period of time. Therefore, I would reverse the part of the initial ruling that the customer is entitled to a conservation credit. Therefore, I move that the Commission grant the exception of Philadelphia Gas Works in part consistent with this motion, and the Office of Special Assistance prepare an opinion and order consistent with this motion.
Second. Sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitmer. Now I'd like to recognize Commissioner Whitmer for purposes of her statement, and that was a pregnant pause second, and I was getting nervous up here. But Commissioner Whitmer, now I will recognize you for purposes of your statement.
And the Vice Chairman should know that I fully support his motion. There was not any intended signal there.
None taken, I can tell.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would like my statement entered into the record as if I'd read it in its entirety. Before the Commission for disposition is the complaint of Marcus Love against Philadelphia Gas Works. The complainant alleges that, in part, that PGW installed a faulty meter, did not discover the error for 4 years, and was improperly attempting to bill him for back charges. I'm fully supportive, as I noted, of the motion offered by Vice Chairman Coleman that removes the conservation credit. However, I am troubled that PGW seemingly continues to have problems identifying issues regarding its meters in a timely fashion. In this case, the automatic meter reading device malfunctioned for a period of almost 4 years. During that time, PGW received a reading of 0 for gas usage and did nothing to address the situation. In addition, the company, which operates on a cash flow basis, collected $0 on this customer's gas usage. This is not the first time that this commission has addressed a complaint involving malfunctioning AMRs at PGW. And frankly, it begs the question, for a company operating on a cash flow basis with other costly infrastructure issues, how many additional malfunctioning AMRs or meters will it take for PGW to act appropriately and timely to collect rates for gas service it provides? If PGW would address these repeated issues in a symptomatic way, the company would gain additional revenue that could be used for badly needed repairs on very poor infrastructure. I am a firm believer that customers must pay for the gas that is used, and I am equally troubled by the fact that the customer in this case did not question why he was receiving bills for 40 months reflecting no usage. Again, this is not our first case involving PGW's inattention to its malfunctioning AMR devices. Discussions of infrastructure improvement often rightly focus on gas safety, but the company's failure to maintain accurate metering and billing infrastructure is also problematic and, in my opinion, symptomatic of larger issues. I support the fine in this case and will not hesitate to seek additional penalties in the future related to AMR deficiencies based on record evidence, including the company's history. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitmer. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the issue of whether or not a conservation credit is merited in terms of, and in terms also how much the discount should be, requires further fact-finding. I think that if Mr. Love's usage in the period of time that the meter was replaced showed that he was conserving gas because he was receiving more accurate price signals, then that's something that should be taken into credit in terms of conservation credit. The amount of that conservation credit can only be determined by a close inspection of Mr. Love's usage following the replacement of the AMR. And so because of that reason, I believe that I cannot agree with the motion here, and I will be voting no on it.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Cawley, do you have
Chairman, I agree with Commissioner Brown on this, although I think that the Vice Chairman has tried to balance this right. I would still grant the conservation credit here. So I'll respectfully vote no to the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Cawley. Noting the 2 objections, the motion passes 3-2.
Continuing with the presentation of public meeting agenda items on behalf of the Office of Special Assistance, in omnibus fashion, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the second item on page 1, James Copage versus Pico Energy Company, Electric Division, as well as the recommendations appearing on pages 2 and 3, through and including the recommendation in the proceeding involving the Commission's Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement versus American Courier Company, Inc.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
On behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, again in omnibus fashion, we recommend the adoption of all of the items appearing on page 4, commencing with the recommendation in the application proceeding involving Energetics, Inc., continuing with all of the items on page 4, and on page 5, all of the items except the Verizon North LLC annual price change opportunity matter, which has been postponed until public meeting of February the 12th.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Continuing with matters on behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services, we recommend the adoption of all of the recommendations appearing on page 6, as well as all of the recommendations on page 7, Well, let's stop with Easy Moving LLC, the second item on page 7.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
It is recommended that the commission adopt the staff recommendation in the quarterly earnings summary report proceeding on behalf of the Bureau of Technical Utility Services.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Commissioner Cawley.
Yes, on this, I also respectfully vote no.
Thank you, Commissioner Cawley. Any further discussion? Noting the objection of Commissioner Cawley, the motion passes 4-1.
Turning now to matters presented on behalf of the Law Bureau, commencing on page 8 of the public meeting agenda, we recommend the adoption of the first recommendation in the rulemaking proceeding pertaining to the motor carrier vehicle list age and mileage requirements for taxis and limousines.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
It is recommended that the Commission adopt the Law Bureau's recommendation pertaining to the compliance plans in the proceeding involving the Rosier PA application for transportation network service, noting the joint statement of Chairman Powelson as well as Commissioner Whitmer.
So moved.
Second?
I'd like to enter into the record this morning our joint statement. Before the Commission is the compliance filing by Rosier LLC in response to 2 separate orders dating back to December 5th of calendar year 2014, granting conditional approval of Rosier to legally operate as a transportation network company, providing service in the majority of portions of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania where this Commission has jurisdiction. We agree with the staff recommendation here this morning that the filing before us adequately demonstrates compliance with the conditions that were set forth in the December 5th order, and we support the staff recommendation to approve this compliance filing. The action here today exemplifies our stance, that is, this innovative use of public space should be encouraged in a way that is consistent with protecting the traveling public, drivers, and supporting, of course, economic development and opportunities across the Commonwealth. To that end, we are pleased to approve this filing and issue Rosier a 2-year certificate of public convenience. However, this case has brought to the forefront the need for both legislative and regulatory reforms in the passenger carrier space. The Commission looks forward to continuing to work with the General Assembly on TNC legislation and further intends to review our own regulations in the future as necessary to accommodate the current state of the transportation industry here in the Commonwealth. And let me take this opportunity to personally thank our Chief Counsel, Buck Pankew, and his team, John Herzog, Eric Rohrbach, for the phenomenal work that they did in getting this compliance filing in front of us here today. And as I said earlier, to quote Taylor Swift, I am exhausted by this case, and my colleagues, I think, would join me in that. But it speaks to the caliber of this commission in order to solve, which was what I consider a very difficult transportation calculus equation. We did it remarkably well here this morning, and it's a testimony to the work of our staffs and our Chief Counsel and his team. So with that, is there any further discussion? Hearing no objections, the motion passes unanimously.
With regard to the petition for reconsideration of the Duquesne Light Company in the proceeding directing a change of electric generation suppliers within 3 days, there was the joint motion of you, Mr. Chairman, as well as Commissioner Whitmer.
I'd like to have the joint motion entered into the record here this morning. Before the Commission for consideration is Duquesne petition for reconsideration, rehearing of the Commission's December 4th, 2014 order denying the company's request for a full waiver of the Commission's regulations requiring electric distribution companies to change customers' generation supplies within 3 business days. Duquesne's petition requests that the Commission, 1, reconsider its decision denying Duquesne's request for a full waiver of 52 PA Code 57.174, and 2nd, reconsider permitting Duquesne to change residential and small commercial customers who contact Duquesne concerning variable rates to default service within 3 business days until Duquesne's proposed Phase 1 solution is implemented. And then finally, grant Duquesne a hearing in order to provide factual evidence in support of the request. This morning, we do not believe that Duquesne has offered has not offered a valid set of arguments as to why the Commission should grant the requested full waiver of Section 57.174. Duquesne has been consistently wrong in its representation to the Commission as to when it will be able to meet the partial waiver that was granted in the December 4th order. Duquesne first responded that it would be able to provide a workable off-cycle switch solution by December 15th. Then the date was moved to January 16th. More recently, the company filed a letter stating that the solution could not be provided by January 16th, but rather would be in the latter part of February 2015. Based on the history of this filing, we fully expect that when the end of February arrives, and it cannot come soon enough, Duquesne will have pushed the compliance date even further into the calendar year. Duquesne has been on notice for years that the Commission wanted electric distribution companies to reduce the amount of time it takes for a customer to change to a new generation supplier. And yet, a brand new billing cycle was designed without accelerated switching in mind, thereby depriving Duquesne customers the opportunity to be a leader in providing this service to its customers. Further, the Commission has historically not cleared that this goal was a priority. Duquesne has unequivocally been on notice since May of last year, after the efforts of this Commission in front of the Independent Regulatory Review Commission, that this regulation was being promulgated, and the company chose not to inform the Commission until shortly before the effective date that it would not be able to comply by the required date of December 15th. And let me just step back for a moment, because through the work of Kirk House and Dan Mumford, who are part of our Office of Competitive Market Oversight, the moment we received approval from the Independent Regulatory Review Commission, Kirk and Dan were doing weekly outreach calls to all of our impacted utilities. This company participated on every one of those calls and notified the professional staff of this commission, the technical staff tasked with this Independent Regulatory Review Commission approval, that they would be in compliance by the December 15th effective date. And so that speaks to a bigger issue. Our statement in the December 4th order holds true. We will not grant a petition for full waiver of our regulations based on future contingencies and possibilities without a clearly articulated and supported demonstration of good cause or actual need. Granting the requested waiver will in no way further the public interest, and rather may actually serve to harm the public interest by taking pressure off Duquesne to implement the important customer protections that are contained in Section 57.174. Similarly, we see no reason to depart from the Commission's prior denial of Duquesne's request to permit the switching customers that we see no reason to depart from the Commission's prior denial of Duquesne's request to permit the switching of customers that contact the company complaining about variable rates to a default service option. The rationale in this instance remains the same. This component of the company's proposal is moot, since we believe Duquesne should be required to provide one off-cycle switch per billing cycle, and this is consistent with every other electric distribution company here in the Commonwealth. Lastly, regarding Duquesne's request for an evidentiary hearing, we note that such hearings are only required to resolve disputed issues of fact. There are no disputes here this morning of fact in this matter, and there was nothing preventing Duquesne from asserting all facts at its disposal that support its request in those petitions. We accept the fact that Duquesne made its petition for a waiver and petition for reconsideration, but this morning we simply do not believe that Duquesne has met its burden of proving that it should be granted the requested waiver, and rather distracting Duquesne with unnecessary evidentiary hearings does not serve any of its customers in any such means. So this morning we move that the Law Bureau prepare an opinion in order consistent with this motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes, the joint motion, passes unanimously.
Continuing with the presentation of recommendations on behalf of the Law Bureau, it is recommended that the Commission adopt the recommendation pertaining to the delegation of authority to the Bureau of Audits appearing at the bottom of page 8, as well as the recommendation on page 9 with regard to Duquesne Light Company's petition for a partial temporary waiver of certain regulations.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
Turning now to matters on behalf of the Office of Administrative Law Judge, appearing on page 10, it is recommended that the Commission adopt ALJ Salapa's recommended decision in the Delaware and Hudson Railway Company proceeding.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Any objections? Hearing none, the motion passes unanimously.
And it should be noted that the proceeding involving ALJ Vero's initial decision pertaining to Stephanie M. Sawyer versus Philadelphia Gas Works has been postponed until public meeting of February the 12th. With that having been said, that concludes the presentation of agenda items, Mr. Chairman.
And I believe there are no other items to come before the commission here
No
this
further
morning.
items.
So on that note, we're adjourned.